It's the 19th of September, 2024, the day two brothers would carry out one of the largest cryptocurrency home invasions in American history. 23-year-old Raymond Garcia and his 24-year-old brother, Isiah Garcia, targeted a single family living in Grant, Minnesota. Raymond was armed with an AR-15 style rifle, while Isiah carried a shotgun. By the end of the day, an entire family will spend 9 hours held hostage at gunpoint by them. A father will be forced to drive more than 3 hours into the Minnesota wilderness, and over $8 million worth of cryptocurrency will disappear. But this wasn't a bank robbery. Nobody cracked an encrypted wallet or exploited some flaw in the blockchain. Instead, the attackers did something much simpler. They hunted the person who controlled the keys to the wallet. This is the story of the longest crypto robbery in America.
New details about the massive crypto heist in Matamidi that we first told you about last night at 10. Federal charges filed today show $8 million was stolen as an entire family was held at gunpoint in their home.
Raymond Christian Garcia and his brother Isiah Angelo Garcia both lived in Waller, Texas, a small city about 40 miles northwest of Houston. At some point before the robbery, the two brothers packed up and headed north on a journey that stretched more than 1,100 miles. Their destination was Grant, Minnesota. Without traffic or stops, the drive takes around 17 hours and passes through 6 different states. It's not the kind of trip someone makes on impulse. Instead of driving their own vehicle, they rented a white Chevrolet Malibu, a decision that would make it harder to immediately connect the car back to them. Once they arrived in the Minneapolis area, they checked into a Motel 6 in Roseville, about a 25-minute drive from the victim's home in Grant. From there, they were close enough to reach the house within half an hour while still remaining outside the neighborhood. There is no public evidence that they visited the home before the robbery, but by this point they were in position. The brothers also arrived prepared. Among the items in their possession were firearms, ammunition, zip ties, and clothing for the operation. None of those items were things they would have picked up after arriving in Minnesota. They had traveled with everything they needed to carry out the robbery. Just before 8 o'clock on the morning of September 19th, 2024, the victim walked outside his home in Grant, Minnesota to take out the garbage. It was part of his normal morning routine. As he stepped into the driveway, 2 armed men approached him. The victim was immediately forced into the garage at gunpoint before being marched back into his own home. The robbery had begun before anyone else inside the house even knew something was wrong. Once inside, the brothers turned their attention to the rest of the family. The victim's wife and adult son were confronted, restrained with zip ties, and held at gunpoint. Within minutes, everyone inside the house had lost their freedom. The doors were closed, the family was under constant watch, and complete control of the home had shifted to the two brothers. Most armed robberies are measured in minutes. This one would last nearly 9 hours. The brothers hadn't come for anything they could carry out of the house. They were here for cryptocurrency, and it couldn't be taken unless the victim gave it away himself. That meant the victim had to stay alive. He had to unlock his devices, open his cryptocurrency wallets. He had to enter passwords, approve transactions, and authorize the movement of millions of dollars in digital assets. The robbery stopped being about physical force alone. From that point on, it became a battle of control. Every minute the family remained inside the house gave the brothers another opportunity to access another account, another wallet, or another piece of information. The longer the ordeal continued, the greater the chance of walking away with even more cryptocurrency. The victim was ordered to begin accessing his cryptocurrency accounts. One by one, he unlocked his devices, logged into his wallets, and started authorizing transfers. As each transaction was approved, millions of dollars in digital assets began leaving his accounts and moving into wallets controlled by the attackers. For a while, everything appeared to be going according to plan. The brothers had gained control of the house. They had control of the victim. Cryptocurrency was already moving. Instead of leaving with what they had already stolen, the brothers began making phone calls. They spoke repeatedly with someone during the robbery, pausing between transfers before asking the victim more questions about his cryptocurrency. It quickly became clear that whoever was on the other end of the phone believed there was more money still to be found. The robbery wasn't over. The phone calls led the brothers to another discovery. The victim owned a hardware wallet, a physical device used to store cryptocurrency offline. Unlike software wallets that can be accessed from a phone or computer, a hardware wallet has to be physically present before any funds can be moved. The problem for the brothers was that this device wasn't inside the house. It was stored at a family cabin, and that changed everything. One of the brothers forced the victim into his own pickup truck and ordered him to drive north. The cabin was roughly 3 hours away, deep in northern Minnesota. While they left the house together, the second brother stayed behind, keeping the victim's wife and adult son at gunpoint. For the first time since the robbery began, the family was separated. When they arrived at the cabin, the victim retrieved the hardware wallet. Once it was in the brothers' hands, the final stage of the robbery began. The victim was once again forced to access his cryptocurrency. More transactions were approved, and more digital assets were transferred out of his control. By the time the brothers were finished, they had stolen more than $8 million worth of cryptocurrency. The robbery had achieved exactly what it set out to do. With the transfers complete, the brothers began leaving the scene. As Isiah and the victim began the 3-hour drive back from the cabin, something else would change. Back at the house, Raymond briefly walked out the back door carrying the AR-15, and the victim's adult son saw an opportunity. It was the first moment all day that no one was standing directly over him. He reached a phone and dialed 911. It was a short call, but it was enough. Within minutes, deputies from the Washington County Sheriff's Office began racing toward the house. The quiet neighborhood in Grant was suddenly filled with patrol cars, sirens, and officers responding to what they believed was an active hostage situation. The home that had been under the brothers' control for the past 9 hours instantly became a crime scene. As patrol cars sped toward the hostage scene with their lights and sirens on, Isiah was driving the victim back home in the victim's own truck. The responding officers had no idea the kidnapped man was sitting inside the vehicle. They flew right past them. Like every other driver on the road, Isiah simply pulled over to let the emergency vehicles pass. Realizing something was wrong, Isiah turned the truck around before reaching the house. He abandoned the vehicle nearby, tossed the shotgun into a field, and walked away toward a nearby middle school parking lot. Back at the house, deputies found the wife and son still zip-tied inside. As officers surrounded the property, Raymond ran out the back door into the woods. The manhunt had begun. It quickly grew far beyond one neighborhood. Officers flooded the area with patrol cars, drones, and search teams looking for 2 armed suspects. The search became so large that nearby Matamedi High School canceled its homecoming football game, fearing one or both gunmen could still be hiding nearby. Raymond didn't get far before abandoning his suitcase, with several pieces of evidence. Hidden in it were a disassembled rifle, ammunition, clothing, and drinks. The robbery was over, but the investigation had only just begun. Among the items inside the suitcase was a Wendy's receipt. On its own, it looked insignificant, but it became the first link in a chain of evidence. The receipt led investigators to a white Chevrolet Malibu that had been rented near Houston just days before the robbery. From there, surveillance footage showed one of the brothers checking into a Motel 6 in Roseville shortly before the attack. Cameras later captured the same Malibu returning to the motel after police responded to the 911 call. The trail didn't end in Minnesota. Traffic cameras picked up the rental car heading south through Oklahoma. The following day, investigators continued following its movements until it arrived back in Waller, Texas. More than 1,000 miles after the robbery began, the investigation had finally led them back to where it started. 3 days after the robbery, on September 22nd, the investigation reached Texas. Federal agents and local law enforcement arrested Raymond Garcia and Isiah Garcia in Waller, the same city they had left just days earlier before driving to Minnesota. Search warrants were executed at locations connected to the brothers as investigators began looking for evidence from the robbery. The searches uncovered phones, computers, gun cases, clothing, restraints, and other items believed to be connected to the home invasion. Investigators now had the suspects, the rental car, the travel records, and much of the equipment used during the robbery. But one thing was missing: the cryptocurrency. Despite recovering evidence from the operation, investigators did not recover the more than $8 million in digital assets that had been stolen from the family. Once in custody, Isiah admitted that he and his brother had driven from Texas to Minnesota, held the family at gunpoint, forced the victim to the remote cabin, and stolen the cryptocurrency. Months later, both brothers pleaded guilty in federal court to their roles in the robbery. As part of their plea agreements, they admitted using firearms during the crime, agreed to pay more than $8 million in restitution, and each now faces a maximum sentence of 20 years in federal prison. As the investigation reconstructed the 9-hour robbery, one detail kept appearing. Throughout the day, the brothers repeatedly stopped what they were doing to make phone calls. They happened while the brothers questioned the victim about his wallets. Whoever they were speaking to appeared to know there was more cryptocurrency that had already been transferred. The calls changed the direction of the robbery. Without them, the brothers may never have learned about the hardware wallet stored at the family cabin. Without them, the trip into northern Minnesota might never have happened. The identity of the caller has never been publicly revealed. Who was on the other end of the phone? To this day, that question remains unanswered.